You think you control your attention. A single unread dot on your phone proves you do not. It sits there on your lock screen, a single unread message from a sender you cannot verify. It is not an emergency. You know it is likely a trivial update or a casual question. Yet, until you tap it, your mind circles it like a vulture. You attempt to focus on your work, but your focus returns to that pixelated dot. You think you chose to care about this. You didn't. The poll is not a choice. It is a reaction.
By the end of this video, you will know exactly why this tiny digital indicator has the power to hijack your evolutionary defenses and how to reclaim your focus. But here's the part nobody tells you. Your brain is not actually seeking the content of that message. It is desperate to resolve something far more dangerous to your survival. Imagine a landscape 40,000 years ago. You live in a tight-knit band of 30 individuals. In this environment, your survival depends entirely on the goodwill of your peers. If the group decides they no longer value you, they don't just ask you to leave. They cast you out into the wilderness.
To be excluded in the Pleistocene era was a death sentence. To prevent this, our ancestors may have developed a hypersensitive social monitoring system, a constant low-level scanning for subtle shifts in group dynamics or peer approval. A flat tone, a turned shoulder, or a delayed response was not just awkward, it was a signal that your access to shared food and warmth was in jeopardy. And then everything changed. In the modern landscape, that ancient monitoring system runs on high-speed processors. When you see an unread message, the absence of immediate context triggers a state of acute uncertainty. Your brain cannot determine if the sender is sending warm praise or preparing a social rejection.
Psychologists suggest that our cognitive systems are asymmetrical. We treat the potential threat of exclusion with far greater urgency than the promise of inclusion. One explanation is that a false positive, worrying about a message that turns out to be harmless, costs you a few seconds of attention. A false negative, ignoring a message that contains a social threat, could cost you everything. That's when I realized that we are not dealing with a failure of willpower. We are dealing with a threat detection mechanism working exactly as intended. The mismatch between our evolutionary biology and our current digital landscape is stark.
In a small tribe, social cues were face-to-face, rich with vocal inflection, posture, and facial micro-expressions that resolved uncertainty in milliseconds. Today, we communicate through flat text, stripped of tone, delivered at unpredictable intervals. The brain is forced to guess the intent behind a delayed response or a brief sentence. This creates a state of chronic social monitoring. The constant availability of hundreds of loose social connections means your brain is running this resource-heavy threat assessment loop, not just for your close tribe, but for acquaintances, colleagues, and strangers. Now, this is where it gets crazy. Your phone turns these ancient social stakes into a game of unpredictable rewards. Every unread dot acts as a variable reward schedule.
Sometimes the message is a critical piece of validation. Sometimes it is spam. Because the reward is unpredictable, your brain remains highly motivated to check it. We call this screen addiction, but the pattern looks more like a desperate attempt to close a loop of social uncertainty. The distress you feel when ignoring a message is not because you are weak. It is because your brain interprets that unresolved communication as a potential drop in your social standing. The cost of exclusion is calculated by your subconscious as too high to ignore, even when the actual stake is a simple 3-second reply. To break this cycle, we must reframe the problem.
The issue is not the physical message, nor is it your lack of discipline. The problem is the unresolved social uncertainty that your brain is attempting to resolve. Once you recognize that your threat detection machinery is misinterpreting a digital notification as an existential threat, the urgency begins to fade. You can begin to consciously label the reaction. It is not a critical update. It is simply an open loop. By leaving the message unread intentionally for set blocks of time, you train your brain to tolerate the mild discomfort of temporary social uncertainty, proving that exclusion is not waiting on the other side. If you want to understand the silent forces shaping your attention, Comment uncertainty if this changed how you think about your phone.